Tonight we are going to sit with a teaching from the Zen and Buddhist tradition called the 10,000 Joys and 10,000 Sorrows. It is about what happens when we stop sorting our lives into the parts we want and the parts we wish would go away. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you're listening from. Most of us spend a lot of energy on this sorting, holding on to what feels good, pushing away what feels bad, trying to arrange things so the difficult parts stay small and the pleasant parts stay long. It is exhausting. And the Buddhist teachers noticed a very long time ago that it does not work. They offered something different, a peace that does not depend on things going a certain way, a peace wide enough to hold all of it, the joy and the sorrow, the easy and the hard, the 10,000 things that make up a human life. That is what tonight is about. You do not need to do anything. You do not need to remember anything. Just rest and let the words soak into you like rain into soft earth. Thank you for joining us here at Midnight Monk. Let us begin. There is a teaching that has been passed down for centuries. It does not come in the form of a lecture or a sermon. It comes as a single, silent gesture. And within that gesture, the whole of the Buddhist path is revealed. Long ago, the Buddha sat on the peak of a mountain. The morning air was clear and cool. Around him, a large assembly had gathered. Monks in their robes, nuns, lay people from the surrounding villages. They sat quietly on the rocky ground, waiting. They had come, as they often did, to hear a teaching. The Buddha looked out over the assembly. He did not speak. The silence stretched on. It filled the space between the gathered listeners. It settled over the mountain like mist. Then the Buddha reached down and picked up a flower. He held it up. That was all. He held it up in silence, and he waited. The assembly was still. Some were puzzled. Some looked at one another. They expected words, and none were coming. What was the meaning of this? What was the teaching? And then, among the gathered disciples, one of the elder monks looked at the flower and smiled. His name was Mahakasyapa. He simply saw the flower, and he smiled. And the Buddha, seeing this, knew that Mahakasyapa had understood. No explanation was given. No commentary was offered. The teaching was complete. This is one of the most treasured stories in all of Zen Buddhism. It has been told and retold for over 2,000 years. And the question it asks is simple. What did Mahakasyapa see? What was it about a flower held in silence that could contain the whole of awakening? To begin to understand, we can start with the flower itself, with what it is. A flower is a form. It is a shape, a color, a fragrance. But look more closely, and you see that it is not one thing. It is many things gathered together. Petals shaped by sunlight. A stem that drew water up from dark earth. Color made possible by the chemistry of soil and rain and season. The warmth of certain days. The cool of certain nights. The patient work of roots reaching down and the slow opening of the bud reaching up. When we look at a flower this way, we see that it is not a single, solid object. It is a relationship, a coming together of countless conditions, meeting in a particular place at a particular time. The Buddha taught that all of life is like this. Our bodies are like this. Our thoughts are like this. Every experience we have, every emotion, every moment of awareness is a gathering of conditions arising together. All conditioned things are impermanent, the Buddha said. It was one of his most fundamental teachings. Everything that comes together will, in time, come apart. Everything that arises will pass away. We can see this truth in the flower itself. We can see the beauty of it in full bloom. The petals open and vivid, the color rich and alive. And if we are honest, we can also see, even in that fullness, the very beginning of its fading. A slight softening at the edge of a petal. A shift in color so subtle it is almost invisible. The flower is already on its way back to the earth, even as it blooms. Beauty and change, present in the same moment. Not one after the other. Together. Always together. This is true of a flower. It is also true of everything we have ever known. A sunset that fills the sky with color is already fading as we watch. A season turns so slowly we barely notice until the air is different and the light has changed. A conversation that moves us deeply comes to its natural end, and then it lives only in memory. A feeling of happiness arrives, stays for a time, and then gives way to something else. A feeling of sadness does the same. Everything we experience has this quality of arising and passing. The Buddha did not teach this to discourage us. He taught it so we could see clearly, so we could stop being surprised by change and instead begin to rest in it, to make peace with the flowing nature of things rather than standing in the river trying to hold the water still. There is something important that follows from this. When we see only the beauty of a thing and not its changing nature, we become attached. We want the beauty to stay. We want the moment to hold still. We want to keep things exactly as they are. The Buddha understood this deeply. He called it clinging. And he taught that a great deal of human suffering comes from exactly this place. From wanting what is here to remain, when its nature is to change. We have all felt this. The end of a wonderful day. The close of a season we loved. The moment when something beautiful begins to fade. There is a kind of ache in it, and that ache is not caused by the change itself. It is caused by the wanting, by the part of us that says, stay. Please stay. The flower teaches us something gentle about this. It does not resist its own unfolding. It does not try to remain in bloom. It opens. It gives its beauty fully, and then it lets go. There is a kind of grace in that, a willingness to be what it is, for as long as it is, and then to return. In the Buddhist tradition, this willingness to let go is considered one of the highest forms of wisdom. Not a cold wisdom, but a warm one, a tender one. The kind of wisdom that comes from truly understanding that nothing was ever ours to hold. But the flower reveals something else, something even deeper. In the Buddhist tradition, this deeper teaching is called emptiness. The word can sound stark, even unsettling, but in its true meaning it is one of the warmest and most liberating teachings in all of Buddhism. It simply means that nothing exists as a separate, independent, isolated thing. Everything exists in relationship. Everything depends on everything else. The flower is empty of a separate self. Take away the sun, and there is no flower. Take away the rain, and there is no flower. Take away the soil, the air, the season, and there is nothing left to call a flower. The flower is not one thing standing alone. It is the whole world gathered into a small and temporary form. And we are the same. We are not fixed, solid, separate beings moving through a fixed, solid world. We are a process, a flow. Thoughts arise and dissolve. Feelings come and go. Sensations appear and vanish. Memories surface and fade. We are, in every moment, a gathering of conditions. And the gathering is always changing. Consider this. The person you were 10 years ago shared your name, but so much has changed. The thoughts are different. The body is different. The understanding is different. And the person you will be 10 years from now will have changed again in ways you cannot predict. There is no fixed, unchanging core that remains the same throughout. There is just this ongoing flow, this continuous becoming. And somehow, within that flow, there is awareness. There is life. There is the experience of being here, right now, exactly as you are. There is a verse from the Buddhist tradition that puts this very simply. Form is not other than emptiness. Emptiness is not other than form. It means that the things we see and touch and feel are not separate from this deeper truth of interconnection. They are the same thing, seen from different angles. The flower is real, and the flower is empty. Both are true at the same time. When we begin to understand this, even just a little, something in us relaxes. The tight grip we hold on who we think we are, on how we think life should be, loosens. And in that loosening, there is a kind of quiet relief. We do not have to hold everything together. It was never ours to hold. There is one more thing the flower reveals. In the Zen tradition, it is called suchness. Suchness is a word for the most direct experience of things before we add anything to them. Before the opinions, the preferences, the names, before we decide whether we like or dislike, before we compare, just the raw quality of what is here. Think of a color, not the name of the color, not what it reminds you of, not whether it is your favorite, just the experience of seeing it. That quality, that directness is suchness. Or think of the sound of a bell rung in a quiet room. In the first moment of hearing, before the mind says bell or beautiful or I like that, there is just sound. Pure hearing. The air vibrating. The body receiving it. For that brief instant, there is no separation between the one who hears and what is heard. There is just the experience, whole and undivided. Or think of stepping outside on a cool morning. The air touches the skin. Before the mind names the sensation, before it says cold or fresh, there is just the feeling. Just what is there, clean and direct and alive. We experience suchness more often than we realize. When we are caught off guard by something beautiful and for a moment the mind goes quiet. When we taste the first sip of something warm on a cold day and for an instant there is only the tasting. When we watch rain falling and forget ourselves in the watching. In those small moments, the usual commentary of the mind pauses and we touch something real. Something unadorned, life as it actually is, before we dress it up with our thoughts about it. The Buddha, in his silence on the mountain, was pointing to this. He was saying, look, not at the idea of the flower, not at the category, not at the name, just this, just what is here, exactly as it is. There is a story from the Buddhist tradition that brings this teaching close to everyday life. A young man traveled to a forest monastery to study with a respected elder. He had spent years reading the ancient texts. He could recite the teachings from memory. He could explain impermanence, suffering, and selflessness with great precision. But something was missing, and he knew it. The knowledge lived in his head and had not yet reached his heart. He arrived at the monastery and found the elder sitting beneath a tree near a stream. He bowed and said, "Teacher, I have studied everything I can find. I understand the words, but I do not feel the truth of them. Something is not yet alive in me. What am I doing wrong?" The elder was quiet for a moment. Then she stood and said, "Come." They walked together in silence through the trees until they reached the place where the stream ran over smooth stones. The elder knelt beside the water and pointed. "What do you see?" she asked. "A stream," the young man said. "Look again." He looked. Water moving over stones. "Look again." He knelt down beside her. He looked more carefully. He noticed the way the light caught the surface, shifting and breaking. He saw the way the water bent and folded around each stone. He saw small leaves turning slowly in the current. He saw the reflection of branches overhead, broken apart by the rippling, and then reformed, and then broken again. He saw tiny insects resting on the surface. He saw the way the deeper water was dark and still while the shallow water moved and sparkled. The elder waited. She did not rush him. After some time she said quietly, "You are still looking at things, naming them, arranging them in your mind. Can you stop doing that? Can you just see?" The young man grew quiet. He sat beside the stream for a long time. He let go of the naming. He stopped cataloging what he noticed. He was no longer trying to understand the stream or to have the right experience of the stream. He was just sitting there, and slowly, something in him loosened. He was no longer observing from the outside. He was not describing it to himself. There was just the shimmer of light, the murmur of water, the coolness of the air near the bank, and the distance between him and the world closed, gently, like a door swinging shut on its own. He turned to the elder. She was smiling. "That," she said, "is what the Buddha was pointing to when he held up the flower." And this is why Mahakasyapa smiled. He was not smiling because he had solved a puzzle. He was not smiling because he had the right answer. He smiled because, in that moment, the distance between himself and what he was seeing fell away. There was just the flower, just the seeing, just the suchness of the moment. And in that suchness, the whole teaching was alive. Nothing was missing. The Buddhist tradition tells us that this teaching is not reserved for mountaintops. It is not something only monks or nuns can experience. It is available in every moment, in every breath, in every sound, in every ordinary experience. The Buddha is always holding up the flower. Every moment of awareness is the gesture. The question is only whether we are truly seeing. And this is where the teaching of tonight begins to take root. The 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows of a human life are not obstacles to this kind of seeing. They are the flower. Each experience, pleasant or painful, familiar or strange, is the Buddha holding up the flower. The whole teaching is there, right here in whatever is arising. As one ancient Zen teacher once said, nothing is hidden. The truth of our lives is not somewhere else. It is not waiting in the next experience, or the next insight, or the next breath. It is here, in this one, in the sound you are hearing now, in the feeling present in your body at this moment, in the air moving gently in and out. The flower is always being held up, and whenever we truly see it, the only natural response is to smile. And so the practice is simple. We do not need to seek out extraordinary experiences. We do not need to travel to a mountaintop. We simply begin to pay attention to what is already here. The breath moving in and out, the sounds around us, the feeling of the body resting where it is. Each of these is the flower. Each of these is the teaching, offered quietly, moment after moment, asking nothing of us except that we notice. In the Buddhist tradition, this kind of attention is called mindfulness. It is the gentle, steady quality of awareness that allows us to be present with whatever arises, not reaching for the pleasant, not turning away from the difficult, just here, just this, and in that simplicity, the whole of the path begins to open. Let us pause here for a moment. There is nowhere else to be right now. Simply rest in however you are feeling, and whenever you are ready, we will continue. The Buddha once said, "What you are looking for is already within you." It is a strange thing about human beings that we spend so much of our lives searching. We search for the right answer, the right teacher, the right experience. We travel great distances. We read books, ask questions, try new paths. And often, the thing we are looking for is so close, so immediate, that we keep walking right past it. There is a story from the early Buddhist tradition about exactly this kind of searching. It is one of the most remarkable stories in all of Buddhist literature, because the teaching at the heart of it is so short, just a few sentences, brief enough to speak standing in the middle of a road. And yet a man who had searched for years heard them and stopped searching. Long ago, there was a man who had given his life to the search for truth. He was earnest and intelligent and deeply committed. He had traveled widely and studied with many teachers. He had sat at the feet of ascetics who lived on almost nothing, hoping that simplicity would strip away the confusion in his mind. He had studied with scholars who could explain the nature of consciousness in intricate detail, and he had learned their frameworks and their terms. He had practiced with hermits in the hills, spending long weeks in silence and solitude. Each teacher had given him something valuable. Each had opened a door, but behind every door, there seemed to be another door. The thing he was truly looking for, a deep and settled understanding of the nature of his own experience, remained just out of reach. He had accumulated a great deal of knowledge, but knowledge alone had not brought him peace. Then he heard about the Buddha. People spoke of this teacher with a kind of reverence he had not encountered before. They said that the Buddha had found the end of suffering, that he taught with extraordinary clarity, that those who heard him and truly listened sometimes understood in a single moment what had taken them years to approach. The man decided he had to find this teacher. The Buddha was far away, many weeks of walking across difficult terrain. But the man did not hesitate. He set out at once. The journey was long. He walked through forests and across open plains. He crossed rivers and followed narrow paths through the hills. He slept under trees and ate what he could find. His feet were sore and his body was tired, but he did not slow down. The urgency in him was real. He felt that this teaching might be the one he had been waiting for, and he did not want to miss it. After many weeks, he reached the village where the Buddha was staying. It was early morning. The streets were quiet, and there, walking calmly through the village with his bowl in hand, was the Buddha collecting his morning meal. The man approached and bowed. "Sir," he said, "I have traveled a great distance to find you. Please teach me. Please give me the teaching." The Buddha looked at him gently. "You have come a long way," he said. "Let me finish gathering this food, and we will return to the monastery. I will be glad to teach you there." But the man could not wait. "Please," he said, "teach me now. I do not know how much time I have. Life is uncertain. I may not have another chance." The Buddha paused. He could see the sincerity in the man's eyes. The urgency was genuine. This was someone who was truly ready to hear. But they were standing in the middle of a dusty road. The Buddha was holding his bowl of food. There was no monastery, no cushion, no quiet hall. Whatever teaching he gave would have to be brief. It would have to be the simplest, most direct expression of the truth he could offer. And so the Buddha spoke. "In the scene," the Buddha said, "there is just the scene. In the herd, there is just the herd. In the sensed, there is just the sensed. In the thought, there is just the thought." That was the teaching, the whole of it. Standing on a road in the morning light, the Buddha offered these words, and the man who had traveled so far and searched so long understood. According to the story, in that very moment, his mind opened. The searching ended. He saw clearly what had always been right in front of him. It is such a simple teaching. It can be spoken in a single breath, and yet it is one of the most profound things the Buddha ever said. It touches the very heart of the Buddhist path, and it is worth spending some time with, letting it unfold slowly. In the scene, there is just the scene. What does this mean? It means that when we look at something, there is, in the first moment, just the pure act of seeing. Light reaches the eyes. Color appears. Shape and form are there. Before we name it, before we decide whether we like it or want it or wish it were different, there is just seeing. Just the raw, direct contact between awareness and what is here. We add so much to every moment. We see a tree, and immediately the mind begins its work. It names the tree. It compares this tree to other trees. It remembers a tree from childhood. It wonders how old this tree is, or whether it will still be here next year. All of that happens in an instant, so fast we do not even notice. But underneath all of it, before all of it, there was just seeing. Just color, just shape, just light. The tree, exactly as it is, without anything added. In the herd, there is just the herd. A sound arises. Maybe it is birdsong, or the wind, or a voice in the distance. In the first instant of hearing, before the mind identifies the source, before it decides if the sound is pleasant or annoying, there is just sound. Just vibration reaching the ear. Just hearing. The experience is complete in itself. It does not need our commentary to be whole. Sometimes a sound catches us off guard. A sudden bird call on a quiet morning. For a split second, there is just the sound, pure and whole, before the mind catches up and says, bird. In that split second, there is no separation between the one who hears and the hearing itself. There is just the experience, open and vivid. In the sensed, there is just the sensed. This covers everything the body feels. The warmth of air on the skin, the pressure of sitting, the texture of fabric against the hands, the subtle movements of breathing, the ache in a tired back, the pleasant heaviness of a full meal. In each of these, before the mind steps in with its preferences and judgments, there is just sensation, just the body's quiet, ongoing conversation with the world. We are sensing all the time, but we rarely notice it. Right now, there is the feeling of weight, where the body rests. There is temperature on the skin. There are small movements happening, adjustments and settlings that the body makes on its own. All of this is here, happening without any effort. In the sensed, just the sensed. Just the body being alive, moment after moment. And in the thought, there is just the thought. Even thinking, that most constant and familiar of all human activities, has this quality. A thought appears. It has a shape, an energy, a kind of texture. It floats up from somewhere, stays briefly, and dissolves. And then another comes, and another. The parade of thoughts is endless. But here is what is remarkable. A single thought, by itself, has almost no weight. It is a momentary event, a flicker in the mind. If we do not grab hold of it, it passes through on its own, leaving no trace. It is only when we grasp a thought, follow it, build on it, believe it completely, that it gains power over us. The Buddha understood this clearly. He saw that our thoughts, which seem so solid and so important, are actually brief and transparent. They arise and vanish, arise and vanish. And we can learn to let them do this without getting caught up in each one. The reason this teaching is so powerful is that it points to something we almost never do. We almost never simply experience what is here. Instead, we add layers. We interpret, evaluate, compare, remember, anticipate. The mind is constantly busy, dressing up each moment in stories and opinions. And those stories and opinions are where most of our struggle lives. Think about how we experience a difficult day. Something happens in the morning. Maybe it is a small thing. A plan changes. Something does not go as expected. In the pure experience of it, there is just a moment of surprise, a sensation in the body, a shift. That is the raw event. But within seconds, the mind has added an entire story. This always happens to me. Now the whole day is ruined. Why can't things just go smoothly? Those additions, those layers, are what create most of our suffering. The moment itself was just a moment. Or consider how we experience another person. Someone says something that stings. In the first instant, there is just hearing, sound reaching the ear. But almost immediately, the layers pile on. We remember the last time this person said something hurtful. We imagine what they must think of us. We rehearse what we should have said in return. We build an entire story around a few words, and within minutes, we are carrying a heavy weight, that the original moment did not contain. The words, in themselves, were just sounds. Our relationship to those sounds is what created the burden. The Buddha's teaching to the man on the road is an invitation to come back to the moment before the layers, to rest in the simplicity of direct experience. In the seen, just the seen. In the heard, just the heard. This is closely connected to what the Zen tradition calls beginner's mind. The Zen teacher Shunryu Suzuki once said, "In the beginner's mind there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind there are few. When we approach each moment freshly, without all our accumulated opinions and expectations, we see more clearly. We experience more fully. We suffer less." There is something beautifully practical about this. It does not require years of study or advanced understanding. It is available right now, in the most ordinary moments. Eating a meal, for instance. So often we eat while thinking about something else. The mind is planning tomorrow or replaying yesterday. The food enters the mouth and we barely taste it. But when we bring this quality of attention to eating, something changes. There is just the flavor, just the texture, just the warmth or the coolness. A simple bowl of rice becomes vivid and full. We taste it as if for the first time. The Buddhist monks of ancient times understood this, which is why they ate their meals in silence, giving each bite their full attention. They understood that a meal, eaten with awareness, is a complete teaching, or listening to someone speak. So often, while another person is talking, we are already preparing our response. We are judging, agreeing, disagreeing, planning what to say next. The other person's voice becomes background noise for our own inner monologue. But what if, even for a few moments, there was just hearing, just the sound of their voice, just the words arriving, just the act of receiving what is being offered? Something shifts in that kind of listening. A space opens between people. The speaker feels heard, and the listener discovers things they would have missed if they had been busy preparing their reply. Or walking. Just walking. Feeling the feet touching the ground. The shift of weight from one leg to the other. The air moving past the face. In the simplicity of just walking, without needing to get somewhere in particular, there is a surprising kind of peace. The ground holds us. The air surrounds us. The body does its ancient, extraordinary work, and we are simply here for it. The Buddhist path often comes back to these ordinary moments. It is not about having special experiences. It is about being present for the experiences we are already having. As the Zen tradition teaches, when you eat, just eat. When you walk, just walk. The simplicity of it is the point. And here we come back to the man standing on the road. He had spent years searching. He had walked across an entire land. He had sat with ascetics and scholars and hermits. And what did the Buddha give him? A teaching that pointed right back to where he already was. Right here, right now. In the seen, just the seen. In the heard, just the heard. There is something deeply moving about this. After all those miles, all that effort, all that longing, the answer was not a complex philosophy. It was not a secret technique. It was the simplest possible invitation to be with what is already here, without adding anything. The great Zen master Huang Po once said, "People are scared to empty their minds, fearing that they will be engulfed by the void. What they don't realize is that their own mind is the void. The man on the road discovered this. The truth he had been seeking was not somewhere far away. It was in every moment he had already lived through. In every sight, every sound, every sensation. It had always been there. He simply had not known how to stop adding to it long enough to see it. And perhaps this is what moved him so deeply. Perhaps this is why the story says his mind opened in that very moment. It was the relief of coming home. The relief of realizing that the long search was over and that it had ended in the most unexpected place, in the sound of birds in that dusty village, in the warmth of morning sun on his face, in the sight of the Buddha standing before him, holding a bowl of food. Just this. Just what was here. Nothing else needed. This is one of the most comforting truths in the Buddhist tradition. We do not have to become someone different. We do not have to travel to distant places. The peace we are looking for is already woven into the fabric of each ordinary moment. In the sound of rain, in the feeling of breath, in the sight of light falling across a wall. The 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows of our lives are the teaching itself, offered freely, moment after moment. All we need to do is stop adding and simply allow what is here to be what it is. In the scene, just the scene. In the herd, just the herd. And in that simplicity, everything opens. Let us rest here for a moment. Allow yourself to settle into whatever is present right now. There is nothing to figure out. And when you are ready, we will go on together. Picture someone sitting in a room, listening to music they love. The room is quiet. The sound fills the space. And something interesting is happening. The person is not leaning forward. They are not reaching toward the speakers. They are sitting back, relaxed, open. The music comes to them. It enters the body without effort. There is no grasping. There is no strain. There is just receiving. The music does not need to be chased. It does not need to be caught. It arrives on its own, filling the room the way sunlight fills a window. And the listener does not need to do anything to make it happen. The only thing required is a willingness to be still and to let the sound come. This kind of receiving happens naturally in certain moments. When music moves us, when sitting outside in the early morning before the day has started, when a child falls asleep in our arms and the body goes still so as not to disturb them. In those moments, there is no effort, no trying to accomplish anything. There is just presence and life comes on its own. The Buddhist path invites us to bring this same quality into every moment. To settle back rather than reach forward. To receive rather than chase. One of the oldest Buddhist teachers in the forest tradition of Southeast Asia used to tell his students, be simple and easy. Just that. Be simple and easy. It sounds almost too plain to be a teaching, and yet within it there is something very deep. Most of the time, we do the opposite. The mind has a habit of leaning forward. It reaches for the next moment before the current one has finished. It is always slightly ahead of where we are, anticipating, planning, expecting. There is a kind of subtle urgency in it, a quiet insistence that this moment is not enough, that what we need is somewhere up ahead. Even in quiet moments, the mind topples forward. During a conversation, we are already forming our reply before the other person has finished speaking. During a meal, we are thinking about what comes after before we have finished what is in front of us. During a breath, we are already waiting for the next one. We are rarely here. We are almost always a half step into the future. And this leaning has consequences. It means we never quite arrive. We are always reaching for something that has not happened yet, and by the time it arrives, we are already reaching for the next thing. There is a feeling that goes with this, a feeling most of us know well. It is the sense of always being slightly behind, always chasing, always not quite settled, always on the way somewhere and never quite there. The Buddha described this pattern with great precision. He taught that the mind has a deeply conditioned tendency to reach out, to grasp, to lean into experience rather than let it arrive. In the Pali language of the early Buddhist texts, the word for this tendency is tanha, which means thirst. It is a thirst that is never quite satisfied, because the moment we reach what we were thirsting for, the thirst moves to the next thing. The Buddhist teaching on this is gentle. It does not demand that we stop reaching. It simply invites us to notice, to see the reaching as it happens, and then to experiment, to see what happens when we settle back, even a little, even for one breath. There is a subtle but important distinction in the Buddhist meditation traditions between two ways of paying attention. One is watching, the other is feeling. When we watch something, we observe it from a slight distance. We are on the outside, looking in. There is a gap between us and what we are experiencing. The mind positions itself as a kind of spectator, keeping track, taking notes. Much of the language we use around mindfulness reinforces this. We say, observe your breath, watch your thoughts, notice what arises. And so, we can develop a habit of standing slightly apart from our own experience, examining it as if it were happening to someone else. This kind of watching has its uses. It helps us gain perspective. It creates space between us and our reactions. But if it becomes our only way of being present, something is lost. We can end up observing our own life from the outside, tracking it carefully, but never quite touching it. The mind becomes a kind of researcher, and our experience becomes the subject of study. It is accurate, perhaps, but it is not warm. It is precise, but it is not alive. There is another way. Instead of watching the breath, we can feel it. Instead of observing a sensation, we can be in it. Instead of standing apart from our experience, we can settle into it from the inside. The difference is immediate. When we shift from watching to feeling, something changes right away. The gap closes. There is no longer a sense of separation between the one who is aware and the thing being noticed. There is just the experience, felt from within. A warmth, a pressure, a movement, a fullness. A Zen teacher once described this as the difference between standing on the bank of a river and being in the river. From the bank, you can observe the current. You can describe how it moves, how fast it goes, how the light plays on the surface. It is useful information. But when you step into the water, the experience is entirely different. The water is around you. You feel it against the skin. You feel the pull of the current. You are part of it. You are in it. Observation has become experience. And there is a richness in that, a fullness that observation alone cannot provide. There is a story about a young monk studying at a Buddhist monastery in the mountains. He had been practicing meditation for several years, and he was diligent. Every morning he rose before dawn and sat in the meditation hall. He followed his breath carefully. He noted every thought that arose and labeled it. He watched his body with great attention, recording each shift and sensation. His notes were thorough. His concentration was strong, but he felt dry. The practice had become mechanical, like copying characters from a book without understanding their meaning. He was doing everything his teacher had asked, and yet something was missing. There was effort but no ease. There was discipline but no warmth. He began to wonder if he was suited to this path at all. One afternoon, he found his teacher in the garden behind the meditation hall. She was kneeling beside a row of young plants, pressing the earth around their roots. "Teacher," he said, "I watch my breath as you have instructed. I observe every thought. I pay close attention to every sensation. But it feels hollow, like I am copying the movements of meditation without touching the heart of it. What am I missing?" The teacher did not look up right away. She continued tending the soil around a small green shoot, pressing it gently with her fingers. The garden was quiet. Somewhere in the trees, a bird was calling. After a time, she said, "When you hold a cup of tea, do you watch yourself holding it? Or do you feel the warmth in your hands?" The monk thought about this. He was not sure how to answer. "You have been standing outside your own life," she said, watching it go by. "Try stepping inside." She lifted a handful of soil and held it out to him. "Feel this," she said. He cupped his hands and received the soil. It was cool and slightly damp. He could feel the texture of it against his palms, the tiny grains pressing into the creases of his hands, the slight weight of it, the earthy smell rising up. "Now," she said, "breathe the way you are holding that soil, from the inside." That evening, something shifted in his sitting. He stopped watching his breath and began to feel it. The air entering his body was no longer something he observed from a distance. It was something he lived. The rise and fall of his chest was no longer data to track. It was a rhythm he inhabited, the way a wave inhabits the ocean. The coolness at the tip of his nose was no longer a fact to note. It was felt, directly, simply, the way the soil had been felt in his hands. The dryness began to soften. The practice was no longer something he was performing. It was something he was in. He was no longer a spectator of his own breathing. He was breathing. And in that simple shift, everything changed. This shift from watching to feeling, from reaching to receiving, changes the whole quality of our experience. And it reaches into every part of life, far beyond any formal sitting. Walking, for instance. Most of the time, walking is something we do to get somewhere. The mind is focused on the destination, and the body moves on its own. But when we slow down and feel the act of walking, something opens up. The foot touches the ground, and there is pressure, there is contact, there is the shift of weight from one side to the other. The leg lifts, and there is lightness, there is movement through air, there is the gentle coordination of muscle and bone and balance. The body is doing something extraordinary, something it has been doing since we first stood up as children, and most of the time, we are elsewhere while it happens. In the Buddhist walking meditation traditions, this is exactly the practice. Walking very slowly, feeling each movement from the inside. The lifting of the foot, the carrying of it forward, the placing of it down again. Each step becomes a whole world. There is nowhere to get to. There is just this step. And in that simplicity, the mind settles. The reaching stops. The restlessness quiets. It is the same with eating. When we feel the food in the mouth rather than thinking about the next bite, the meal comes alive. It is the same with sitting. When we feel the weight of the body resting rather than planning what comes next, the sitting becomes its own reward. It is the same with standing in a doorway and looking outside. When we stop thinking about the weather and simply feel the air, there is a fullness to the moment that was not there before. When we settle back and feel what is actually happening, the ordinary becomes enough. We do not need to add anything to it. We do not need it to be special or exciting or different from what it is. The Zen tradition has a beautiful phrase for this quality. It calls it just sitting. In Japanese, the word is shikan taza. It means sitting with no goal, no agenda, no effort to achieve a particular state. Just sitting, just being here, just receiving whatever arises, moment after moment, without reaching for any of it. It is one of the most radical teachings in all of Buddhism, because it asks us to give up the one thing we are most attached to, the idea that we need to get somewhere other than where we already are. The great Zen master Dogen, who lived in Japan 800 years ago, wrote, "To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be awakened by the 10,000 things." When we stop watching ourselves so carefully, stop monitoring and measuring and evaluating, something surprising happens. The world comes alive. We hear sounds we had not noticed. We feel sensations we had been ignoring. We see colors with fresh eyes. We are, as Dogen put it, awakened by the 10,000 things. The 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows, arriving on their own, asking nothing of us except that we receive them. There is a Zen saying that captures this simply. When walking, just walk. When sitting, just sit. Above all, do not wobble. The wobbling is the reaching. The wobbling is the mind going ahead or falling behind, wanting this or resisting that. When we are just here, fully in the step, fully in the breath, fully in whatever is happening, there is a steadiness, a groundedness. We are planted in the present, and there is a quiet strength in that. We can feel the difference between wobbling and stillness. When the mind is jumping between the past and the future, worrying about one and planning for the other, there is a kind of turbulence. Everything feels slightly off balance. But when the mind settles into what is actually happening, even for a few breaths, the turbulence calms. There is ground beneath us. There is air around us. There is this moment, and it is enough. And from that settled place, something emerges on its own. The Buddha described it as a kind of natural ease. He compared the mind to a jar of muddy water. When we keep stirring the water, shaking the jar, adding to it, the water stays cloudy. But when we set the jar down and simply leave it alone, the mud settles to the bottom and the water clears on its own. We do not have to purify it. We just have to stop disturbing it. This is one of the most beautiful ideas in the Buddhist tradition. That clarity is not something we create. It is something we allow. It is already there, underneath the stirring. Our task is simply to stop adding to the turbulence and let things settle in their own time. This is a deep trust at the heart of the Buddhist path. the trust that we do not have to make anything happen. That awareness, all by itself, is enough. That when we settle back and simply pay attention, with warmth, with interest, with openness, the path unfolds beneath our feet. The ancient Buddhist teachers called this quality of trust saddha, sometimes translated as faith or confidence. It is the confidence that the present moment, met with full attention, is sufficient. That nothing needs to be added. Perhaps there have been moments like this already. Listening to music, sitting outside under a wide sky, resting beside someone in easy silence. Moments when the reaching stopped and there was just being here, and it was enough. The invitation of the Buddhist path is simply to let that quality of presence become more familiar, to settle back and allow life to come. The 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows arrive on their own. They always have. The only task is to be here to receive them. Let us pause here. Allow the breath to be just the breath. Allow the body to rest. There is no hurry. Whenever you feel ready, we will continue. If you have ever sat beside a river for a long time, something begins to happen. At first, the sound of the water is just noise. A rush, a tumble, a blur of movement. But after a while, if you stay, the ear begins to pick up patterns. There is a rhythm to it, a pulse beneath the chaos. The water meets a stone and curls around it in a way that repeats and repeats and repeats. There is a kind of breathing in it. The river has been doing this for a very long time, and it is in no hurry. Everything in nature has a rhythm. The tide comes in and goes out. The seasons turn. Birds call in the morning and go quiet in the heat of the afternoon. Even the sky has its tempo, clouds building and dissolving at a pace that has nothing to do with our schedules or our plans. There is an ancient saying, often shared in the Zen tradition, that captures this trust in natural rhythm. It goes, sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes, and the grass grows by itself. The grass does not need our help. It does not need our encouragement or supervision. Given the right conditions, sun and rain and soil and time, the grass grows on its own. It has been doing this for millions of years. It knows how, and our inner life is the same. Given the right conditions, awareness unfolds on its own. Understanding arrives on its own. Clarity comes on its own. The right conditions are simple: a willingness to be still and a willingness to stop interfering. How many times have we struggled with a problem, turning it over and over in the mind, and then given up and gone for a walk, and the answer arrived by itself? How many times has understanding come not through effort but through rest? The mind, when it is given space, has its own intelligence. It sorts, it clarifies, it resolves. But it does this in its own time, at its own pace, not on our schedule. This is one of the most quietly radical ideas in the Buddhist and Zen traditions. That peace is not something we construct through effort. It is something that emerges when we stop getting in the way. The seed does not need to be told how to become a tree. The river does not need to be told how to reach the sea. And the mind does not need to be told how to find its own balance. It needs only to be allowed. The Buddha spoke about this in terms of rhythm. He observed that everything in experience has a natural tempo. Breath has a rhythm. The body has a rhythm. Emotions arise and pass at their own pace. Thoughts come and go in waves. There is a pulse to being alive, and it does not need to be managed. When a musician plays well, she has found the rhythm of the music. She is not forcing it. She is not ahead of it or behind it. She is inside it, and the music moves through her. When an athlete is at his best, there is a grace to the movement. He is not fighting the activity. He has found its tempo, and he is moving with it. Our inner experience works the same way. There is a natural rhythm to how a breath unfolds. The air enters slowly, fills the lungs, pauses for an instant at the top, and then releases. There is a fullness in the inhale and a softening in the exhale, and the whole cycle happens without any instruction from us. If left alone, the body breathes at exactly the pace it needs. We do not need to improve it. We do not need to regulate it. The rhythm is already there. It has been there since the moment we were born. The same is true of thoughts. Left alone, a thought arises, stays briefly, and dissolves. Another follows, then another. There is a natural pace to this, a kind of gentle parade. But when we grab a thought and hold on, turning it over and over, or when we push a thought away because we do not like it, we interrupt the rhythm. The flow breaks. It is as if we reached into a stream and tried to hold one particular handful of water in place. The water backs up. Things get turbulent. The ease is lost. And the same is true of feelings. Sadness, when left alone, arises and passes. It washes through and it moves on. Happiness arises and passes too. Anxiety comes, stays for a time, and then it softens. Each emotion has its own natural lifespan, its own tempo. When we let feelings move at their own pace, they rarely overwhelm us. It is only when we cling to them or fight against them that they become stuck. The Buddhist teaching here is very gentle. It says, see if you can let the rhythm establish itself. See if you can stop conducting and simply listen. There is a story about a Buddhist teacher who lived in a small monastery at the edge of a forest. He was known for the simplicity of his teaching. Students would come from far away, expecting complex instructions, elaborate techniques, detailed maps of the mind. Instead, he would say the same thing to almost everyone. A young woman arrived one morning, having traveled for several days. She was eager and serious. She sat before the teacher and said, "I have come to learn meditation. Please teach me everything you know." The teacher smiled. "Everything I know," he said. "That will not take long." She waited. "Sit," he said, "and know that you are sitting." She waited for more. There was no more. "That is it?" she asked. "When you breathe," he said, "know that you are breathing. When you walk, know that you are walking. When you eat, know that you are eating. But what about the deeper teachings?" she asked. "The stages of insight, the levels of concentration, the nature of consciousness." The teacher picked up a broom that was leaning against the wall beside him. "There is another teacher I admire very much," he said. "A Zen master. He once said that in the Dharma there are only two things. You sit and you sweep the garden. It does not matter how big the garden is." The young woman looked at the broom, then back at the teacher. "Your garden is your life," he said. everything in it. Your thoughts, your feelings, your relationships, your work, your joys, your difficulties. You sit and you sweep the garden. That is the whole of the practice. She began her sitting that afternoon, and at first she found it almost unbearably simple. Sit. Know you are sitting. Breathe. Know you are breathing. Her mind wanted something more complex to hold on to. It wanted stages and systems and progress reports. But as the days passed, something began to shift. The simplicity, which had first felt like emptiness, began to feel like spaciousness. There was room in this kind of attention. Room for everything. Room for the pain in her knees and the sounds of the forest and the memories that drifted through her mind and the feelings that rose and fell like weather. She did not need to organize any of it. She did not need to understand it or categorize it. She just needed to be with it. To know she was sitting. To know she was breathing. And a rhythm began to establish itself. The breath came and went. Sounds came and went. Feelings came and went. She stopped trying to manage the flow and simply let it move through her. And in that allowing, something settled. A quietness, a kind of ease she had not expected. When she went to see the teacher again, she said, "I think I understand." He smiled. "Good," he said. "Now go sweep the garden." Zen has a phrase that describes this quality of ease. It is called free and easy wandering. Free and easy wandering does not mean drifting. It does not mean getting lost or getting carried away. It means something much more specific. It means a kind of openness that is willing to be with whatever arises without struggle. Whatever comes, comes. Whatever goes, goes. There is no fight with experience. There is just a willingness to be here, in this moment, with whatever it holds. The struggle in our lives usually comes from one place, the refusal to accept what is already present. An uncomfortable feeling arises in the body, a tightness in the chest, a knot in the stomach, and instead of letting it be there, we clench around it. We resist it. We wish it away. And the resistance is what creates the suffering. The feeling itself, left alone, would come and go on its own. But when we fight it, we hold it in place. We give it a permanence it does not naturally have. The same is true of pleasant experiences. Something good arises. A moment of peace, a feeling of connection, an hour of clarity. And we grab for it. We hold on. We try to make it last. And in the holding, the ease of it slips away. The moment that was so beautiful becomes tense, because now we are afraid of losing what we have. The joy is there, but the fear of its ending is there too, and the fear slowly crowds out the joy. Free and easy wandering is the place between these two. The place where we are not pushing anything away and not holding anything in place. Things arise. Things pass. And through it all, there is a steady, open attention. A willingness to be with whatever is here and to let it go when it is ready to leave. The Buddha called this quality of mind equanimity. In the Pali language of the early Buddhist texts, the word is upekkha. It is considered one of the highest qualities a human being can develop. It does not mean that we do not care. It does not mean that we are numb or disconnected. It means that our caring is wide enough to hold everything. The joy and the sorrow, the gain and the loss, the praise and the blame, all of it held in a steady, open awareness. A Zen teacher who lived centuries ago in a small mountain monastery was known for 2 words. Whenever something happened, good or bad, students would come to tell him, and he would say the same thing. Is that so? A villager came to the monastery one day, furious, accusing the teacher of something he had not done. The teacher listened calmly and said, "Is that so?" Weeks later, the same villager returned, embarrassed, realizing his accusation had been wrong. He apologized profusely. The teacher listened and said, "Is that so?" A student received wonderful news about his family. He came to the teacher, beaming. The teacher smiled and said, "Is that so?" Another student came with sad news. Something precious had been lost. The teacher listened with kindness in his eyes and said, "Is that so?" This is equanimity, not coldness, not distance. The teacher's eyes were warm. His attention was full. He was completely present with each person, but he was not thrown by any of it. The good news did not sweep him into excitement. The bad news did not pull him into despair. He remained steady, open, and kind, present with whatever arrived. Is that so? 2 words, and in them, a complete teaching about how to meet life, not with walls, not with numbness, but with a steadiness that allows everything to come and go without being knocked off balance. This is what the rhythm of things looks like when it is lived fully. The joys arrive and are welcomed. The sorrows arrive and are held with care. Nothing is rejected. Nothing is clung to. And through it all, there is presence. Quiet, warm, attentive presence. This is the rhythm the Buddhist path invites us to find. The rhythm of allowing. The rhythm of not interfering. Letting each moment arrive and depart on its own schedule. Breath comes. Breath goes. A thought rises. A thought fades. A feeling swells and then subsides. A sound appears and then is gone. Each moment replacing the one before it. Each moment fresh. And through it all, awareness remains. Steady, patient, unhurried. It is a rhythm that is always available. It does not require special conditions. It does not require silence or solitude, though those can help. It is happening right now, wherever this is being heard. The breath is moving. The body is resting. Sounds are present. Thoughts are drifting through. The rhythm is already here. It has always been here. It is as close as the next breath. And there is something deeply restful in this understanding. The Buddhist path does not ask us to create a peaceful state of mind through willpower. It asks us to notice the peace that is already present when we stop disturbing it. The rhythm is already playing. The music is already here. The only invitation is to stop talking over it and listen. There is a verse attributed to the Buddha that says, "In the end, only 3 things matter: how much you loved, how gently you lived, and how gracefully you let go of things not meant for you." Letting go is not losing. Letting go is trusting the rhythm. Trusting that what needs to come will come, and what needs to go will go, and that the one who is here, quietly aware, is enough. The 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows are all part of this rhythm. They come and they go, and the peace that Buddhism points to is not found by holding on to the joys or running from the sorrows. It is found in the rhythm itself, in the willingness to let it all move through. like the river that flows and does not stop to ask whether the next stretch will be better than this one. Sitting quietly, doing nothing. Spring comes, and the grass grows by itself. Let us take a breath here. Let the body soften. There is nothing to hold on to and nothing to push away. Whenever you are ready, we will go on. There is a common misunderstanding about the Buddhist path. The misunderstanding is this, that peace means withdrawal, that a still mind is an empty mind, that someone who has found inner quiet has somehow stepped back from the world and no longer feels things deeply. The truth taught in the Buddhist and Zen traditions is the opposite. A still mind does not feel less. It feels more. When the usual noise of the mind quiets down, what remains is not blankness. What remains is a vast openness, and into that openness flows the full range of human experience. The happiness and the heartbreak, the beauty and the difficulty, the tenderness and the grief, all of it. In Zen Buddhism, there is a phrase for this full range. It is called the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows. 10,000 does not mean exactly 10,000. It means everything, the totality of experience. And the teaching is that when the mind is truly still, truly open, it does not close itself off from any of it. There is an important distinction in Buddhism between two qualities of mind that can look similar from the outside but are very different on the inside. The first is equanimity. The second is indifference. Indifference is a pulling back. It is a kind of numbness. When something difficult arises and we go numb, when we stop caring because caring hurts too much, when we disconnect because connection feels too risky, that is indifference. It looks like calm, but underneath it, there is a wall. Something has been shut out. Equanimity is something else entirely. Equanimity is a mind that is open to everything and overwhelmed by nothing. It meets joy with warmth. It meets sorrow with tenderness. It meets confusion with patience. It does not pull back. It does not go numb. It stays. It remains present, steady, and caring, even when what it meets is painful. The Buddha compared equanimity to a mother with 4 children. She loves all of them equally. She does not love the happy child more than the difficult child. She does not turn away from the one who is struggling. Her love is wide enough to hold all 4. That is equanimity. A heart wide enough to hold everything. Indifference builds a wall. Equanimity opens a door. This distinction matters because there is a temptation, especially for those of us drawn to the Buddhist path, to mistake shutting down for waking up. To think that if we can stop feeling bothered by things, we have made progress. But the Buddhist masters are clear on this. Feeling less is not the goal. Feeling fully, with balance and openness, is the goal. And when the heart is truly open, something surprising follows. Compassion arises on its own. It does not need to be manufactured. It does not need to be willed into existence. It simply appears, the way warmth appears when the sun comes out from behind a cloud. This is one of the most beautiful patterns in the Buddhist understanding of the mind. When we allow ourselves to feel our own difficulties without shutting them out, something softens. The walls come down. And when the walls come down, we begin to feel the difficulties of others too. Their sadness touches us. Their struggle moves us. Their loneliness reaches us. Because we are no longer guarded against our own pain, we are no longer guarded against theirs. The boundary between my suffering and their suffering begins to thin. And in that thinning, something warm and natural emerges. A care for others that is not forced or performed, but simply felt. The great Buddhist teacher Shantideva, who lived in India over 1,000 years ago, wrote, "All the suffering in the world arises from seeking happiness for oneself. All the happiness in the world arises from seeking happiness for others." It is a radical statement, and yet when the heart opens, it feels true. The most peaceful people are often the most compassionate. The most still are often the most deeply engaged with the world around them. But what does this engagement look like? This is where another important distinction comes in. The Zen and Buddhist traditions teach the difference between what they call non-action and inaction. Inaction is doing nothing. It is passivity. It is sitting on the sidelines and watching life go by. It is withdrawal. It is the decision not to participate, not to care, not to respond. Non-action is something very different. Non-action is a stillness of mind from which clear, compassionate action can arise. It is not the absence of movement. It is the absence of reactivity. The body can be very active while the mind remains still. The hands can work, the voice can speak, the feet can move, and all of it can come from a place of quiet clarity rather than from agitation or fear. Think of a skilled healer treating a wound. Her hands are moving, working quickly and with precision, but her mind is still. She is not panicking. She is not caught up in the drama of the moment. She sees clearly what needs to be done, and she does it with steadiness and care. That is non-action. Full engagement, full activity, rooted in inner stillness. The Buddha himself was one of the most active people who ever lived. He walked across northern India for 45 years, teaching, founding communities, settling disputes, caring for the sick, speaking with kings and farmers alike. He was not withdrawn from the world. He was deeply, continuously engaged with it. But his engagement came from stillness. His action came from non-action. And because of that, his actions carried a clarity and a compassion that touched everyone around him. A student had been traveling with a companion along a road through the countryside. It was late in the day, and the road passed through a stretch of thick forest where the light was dim. As they walked, a stranger stepped out from among the trees and grabbed for the student's traveling bundle. It was a frightening moment. The student froze. Her companion stepped forward quickly and put himself between them, and the stranger backed off into the trees. They hurried on and reached safety as the last light faded. Some days later, the student returned to the monastery and told her teacher what had happened. She described the road, the forest, the stranger, the fear she had felt, and how her companion had helped. The teacher listened carefully, wanting to hear every detail. When she finished, the teacher was quiet for a moment. Then he said something she did not expect. "With all the loving kindness in your heart," he said gently, "you should have taken your walking stick and stopped that person firmly." The student was surprised. She had expected her teacher, a man of great gentleness, to praise her restraint, to say something about patience or acceptance. Instead, he was telling her that compassion, in that moment, required action. This is the teaching of non-action. It does not mean standing still when someone needs help. It does not mean accepting harm when harm can be prevented. It means that when action is needed, it can come from a place of love rather than a place of anger. The teacher did not say, "You should have been furious." He said, "With all the loving kindness in your heart." The action and the kindness are not separate. They arise together from the same quiet center. This is a teaching that the Buddhist tradition comes back to again and again. Compassion is not always soft. Sometimes compassion is fierce. Sometimes the most loving thing is to speak up, to step forward, to protect. A parent who keeps a child from danger is not being aggressive. A friend who tells a hard truth is not being unkind. There is a kind of strength that comes from love, and it is one of the most powerful forces in human life. The Zen tradition especially understands this. The great Zen teachers were often people of tremendous gentleness and tremendous strength combined. They could sit in silence for hours, and then, when the moment called for it, speak with a directness that cut through everything. Their stillness was not fragility. It was a deep well from which clear action could be drawn. There is a difference between reacting and responding. A reaction is fast, automatic, unexamined. Something happens and the mind fires. Anger, fear, defensiveness, blame. The reaction is usually about protecting ourselves. It comes from the part of the mind that feels threatened. A response is different. A response comes from a quieter place. It takes in the full situation. It considers. It feels. And then it acts, or speaks, or remains silent, based on what the moment actually needs. A response can be just as strong as a reaction, sometimes stronger, but it carries a different quality. There is clarity in it. There is care. Consider two people receiving the same difficult news. One reacts immediately, tightening, blaming, looking for someone at fault. The other pauses. She feels the difficulty of the moment. She lets it land. And then she speaks or acts from a place that is wider than the initial sting. The second person is not less affected. She may be more affected because she has let the full weight of the situation in. But her response comes from openness rather than contraction. And because of that, it is more likely to be helpful, more likely to be kind, more likely to be true. The Buddhist path is, in many ways, the practice of moving from reaction to response, from automatic to aware, from the tight, fast, self-protective impulse to the wider, steadier, more compassionate one. And this shift does not happen through willpower alone. It happens through the gradual opening of the heart, through the willingness to feel more rather than less, through the patient development of the kind of inner stillness from which clear seeing naturally arises. And this brings us back to the 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows. Because the willingness to feel everything, the refusal to shut anything out, is what makes genuine response possible. If we are numb, we cannot respond with compassion. If we are shut down, we cannot feel what the moment needs. If we have built walls around our hearts to keep out pain, we have also kept out the tenderness that makes real kindness possible. The Zen master Ryokan, who lived alone in a small hut in the mountains of Japan hundreds of years ago, understood this deeply. He had left behind the world of ambition and achievement and gone to live among the trees with almost nothing. His hut was simple. His meals were whatever he could gather or receive from the kindness of villagers nearby. He spent his days sitting, walking, and writing small poems about what he saw and felt. He was, by any ordinary measure, a man with nothing. And yet his poems overflow with a richness that centuries have not diminished. He wrote about the moon, about the rain, about the children he played with in the village, about the sound of the wind in the pines. He wrote about loneliness without self-pity and about beauty without possessiveness. His life was proof that simplicity does not lead to emptiness. It leads to fullness. One of his poems captures this openness with particular tenderness. He wrote of wishing that his monk's robes were wide enough to gather up all the suffering people in this floating world. Just that simple wish, that his arms could reach far enough to hold everyone who was hurting. The phrase, "this floating world," comes from the Buddhist understanding that all things are impermanent, that life floats and changes and passes. And yet within that floating world, Ryokan's compassion was steady. His wish to hold others was real and deep. This is not the wish of someone who has shut down. This is the wish of a heart so open that the joys and sorrows of others move through it as freely as his own. And that openness, that willingness to feel the full weight and beauty of being alive, is what the Buddhist tradition considers true strength. There is a gentle teaching in all of this. The 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows are not separate things that happen to us. They are the texture of being alive. They are what a human life is made of. And the peace that the Buddhist path points to does not come from sorting them, keeping the joys and discarding the sorrows. It comes from opening to all of it, from letting the heart be wide enough, steady enough, tender enough to hold whatever arrives. The Buddha said, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." This includes the parts of us that are joyful and the parts that are sorrowful, the parts that feel strong and the parts that feel fragile, the parts that are clear and the parts that are confused. All of it deserves our kindness. All of it belongs. And when this kind of openness becomes familiar, something changes in how we move through the world. The joys become brighter because we are fully here for them. A simple pleasure, a warm cup, a kind word, a quiet evening lands more deeply when the heart is open. And the sorrows become lighter because they are allowed to move. They are not trapped behind walls. They are not fought against. They arrive, they are felt, and in time they pass. Like weather moving through an open valley. Present for a time, fully felt, and then gone. There is an old Buddhist story about a woman who came to the Buddha in deep grief. She had lost someone very dear to her, and her sorrow was overwhelming. She asked the Buddha if he could take her pain away. The Buddha listened with great tenderness. Then he said, "Bring me a mustard seed from a house that has never known sorrow. I will use it to take your pain." The woman set out, going from house to house, asking if anyone had lived a life free of sorrow. At every house, the answer was the same. Everyone had known loss. Everyone had known grief. Everyone had felt the weight of the 10,000 sorrows. She did not find the mustard seed, but something shifted in her as she walked from door to door. She began to understand that her sorrow was not hers alone. It was part of the larger human story. And in that understanding, her heart opened, not just to her own grief, but to the grief of everyone she met. The sorrow did not disappear, but it was no longer isolating. It had become a doorway to connection. This is what the Zen and Buddhist traditions have been pointing to throughout these teachings. A life fully lived. a heart fully open. The 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows, welcomed equally, held gently, and allowed to pass. And in that openness, the whole world reveals itself. Let us rest here. Let the breath come easily. There is nothing to fix or change right now. Whenever you are ready, we will continue. There is a story about a Zen monk who lived alone in a small hut in the mountains. He had very little: a straw mat, a cooking pot, a few bowls, a worn robe. His life had been pared down to almost nothing over many years, and he was content. He spent his days sitting in meditation, walking in the forest, and sometimes writing small poems about the things he noticed. The sound of rain on the roof, the color of leaves in autumn, the particular silence that comes just before dawn. One evening, he returned from a long walk in the hills to find that his hut had been visited while he was away. Someone had come in and taken what little he had. The bowls were gone. The pot was gone. Even a small cloth he used as a blanket had been carried off. The hut was bare. The monk stood in the doorway for a moment and looked at the empty room. Then he sat down on the floor and looked out through the window. The moon was bright that night, full and steady, pouring silver light across the bare wooden floor. He smiled, and he wrote a small poem. The thief left it behind. The moon at the window. There is something in that poem that goes beyond ordinary patience or acceptance. It points to a way of seeing that the Zen tradition considers one of the deepest fruits of practice. The monk did not say, "I am glad I was robbed." He did not pretend the loss was nothing. He simply noticed what remained. Everything he owned had been taken. And yet here was the moon. Here was the light filling the room. Here was the mountain air, cool and clean. Here was the silence of the hills. Here was his own life, his awareness, his breath. None of that had been stolen. None of it could be. Most of us, coming home to an empty room, would feel the absence. We would see what was missing. The monk saw what was present. And what was present was vast. The whole sky. The whole night. The whole luminous fact of being alive. The Zen tradition teaches that most of our suffering around loss comes from a confusion about what we actually need. We build our lives around things, around circumstances, around particular arrangements that feel essential. My home needs to look like this. My days need to go like that. My relationships need to remain just so. And when any of it changes, when something is taken or altered or lost, we feel as though the ground beneath us has given way. But the monk in his empty hut discovered something different. When everything was stripped away, what remained was not poverty. It was openness. It was freedom. It was the moon at the window. The Buddha spoke about this directly. The root of suffering is attachment, he taught. This is one of the core insights of the entire Buddhist path, and it does not mean that we should not love things, or enjoy things, or care about the people and places in our lives. It means something more subtle and more useful than that. Attachment, in the Buddhist sense, is the belief that our well-being depends on having something remain a certain way. It is the conviction that we cannot be all right unless this particular thing stays in place. When we are attached to a situation, our peace is held hostage by it. If the situation remains, we are fine. If it changes, we suffer. Our inner state rises and falls without a circumstances, like a small boat tossed by every wave. And the difficulty is that everything changes. Circumstances shift. People change. The body changes. The mind changes. Seasons turn. What felt certain yesterday feels uncertain today. And so, if our peace depends on things staying the same, we are building on ground that is always moving. But the monk in the mountains had untangled that knot. He had discovered, through years of quiet living and practice, that his peace did not depend on his bowls, or his pot, or his blanket. It did not depend on having things arranged in a particular way. It rested on something more fundamental, on awareness itself, on the simple fact of being alive, being present, being here. And that could not be stolen. No thief could carry it away. This is not a teaching about being careless with the things of our lives. It is a teaching about where we place the foundation of our peace. If the foundation is in things that can change, and all things change, then the foundation is always shaking. But if the foundation is in awareness, in presence, in the quiet fact of being here, then it is steady. It does not depend on what happens. It holds. There is a teaching from a Buddhist master in Southeast Asia that puts this in very practical terms. He would hold up a drinking cup, a simple clay cup, nothing special, and say to his students, "To me, this cup is already broken." His students would look at the cup, whole and solid in his hand, and wonder what he meant. "I enjoy this cup," he said. "I drink my tea from it every morning. I appreciate it. But in my mind, it is already broken. Someday it will slip from a hand. Someday it will fall from a shelf. Someday it will crack or shatter. This is its nature. Everything that has form will eventually lose that form. Everything that comes together will come apart." He paused. "So I enjoy it now," he continued, "fully, without worry, because I have already accepted what will happen. And when it does break, I will not suffer over it. I will simply say, 'Of course. I knew this was coming.'" His students often found this teaching puzzling at first. It sounded sad, even fatalistic. But as they sat with it, many of them discovered something surprising. Understanding the cup's impermanence did not take away the enjoyment. It deepened it. Each morning, drinking tea from the cup, there was a quiet appreciation that was free of anxiety. No fear of losing it. No tension about protecting it. Just the simple pleasure of a warm cup in the hands, fully tasted, fully received. This is a remarkable way to live. And it applies to far more than cups. It applies to seasons, to friendships, to chapters of life, to the feeling of sunlight on a particular afternoon. Everything is temporary. And when this is understood, really understood, something loosens in the heart. The grasping softens. The holding relaxes. And what is left is a deeper, cleaner kind of enjoyment. Love without chains. The difficulty, of course, is that the mind does not naturally let go. It holds on. It replays. It revisits. It worries that the good thing will end, or it rehearses the bad thing that has already passed. The mind is, by nature, a collector. It gathers experiences, opinions, memories, grudges, hopes, and fears, and it carries them all, like a traveler who picks up every stone along the road until the bag is too heavy to lift. The Buddhist path is, in one sense, the practice of setting things down, of learning to travel light, of discovering that we can put something down and still be whole. That letting go of what we are carrying does not leave us empty. It leaves us free. There is a story about two Buddhist monks, an elder and a younger, walking together along a road after a heavy rain. The road was muddy and flooded in places. The sky had cleared, but the ground was still soaked. Puddles stretched across the path, wide and brown. As they came around a bend, they saw a woman standing at the edge of a particularly deep puddle. She was dressed in fine clothes and clearly could not cross without ruining them. She looked frustrated. She looked helpless. Without a word, the elder monk walked over, lifted her up, and carried her across. He set her down gently on the dry ground on the other side. She thanked him, surprised, and went on her way. The two monks continued walking. They walked in silence for a long time. The younger monk's face was tight. He was thinking. After nearly an hour, he could not contain himself any longer. "Brother," he said, "we have taken vows not to touch women. How could you carry that woman across the puddle?" The elder monk looked at him calmly and without judgment. "I put her down an hour ago," he said. "You are still carrying her." This is one of the most beloved stories in the Buddhist tradition, and the teaching in it is startlingly simple. The elder monk did what the moment required. He saw someone who needed help. He helped, and then he moved on. The moment was complete. He did not carry it forward. He did not replay it, judge it, worry about it, or justify it. He put it down, and in putting it down, he was free. Free to walk, free to notice the birds, the changing light, the feel of the road beneath his feet. Free to be fully in the next moment, because the last one had been fully released. The younger monk, on the other hand, was still carrying the moment an hour later. He was turning it over in his mind, examining it from every angle, arguing with it. The action was long finished, but in his mind, it was still happening. He was walking down a beautiful road on a clearing afternoon, but he was not there. He was back at the puddle, back in the past, back in the grip of something he could not let go of. And this pattern runs through so much of ordinary life. Not carrying women across puddles, but carrying moments. Carrying conversations that ended hours ago, still replaying the words, still thinking of what we should have said. Carrying decisions that have already been made, still second-guessing, still rehearsing alternatives. Carrying old hurts that have long since healed on the outside but remain vivid inside, as fresh as the day they happened. Carrying worries about things that have not happened and may never happen, letting the imagination build whole structures of dread out of thin air. There is a weight in all of this, a heaviness. The past sits on one shoulder, and the future sits on the other, and the present moment, which is the only place where life is actually happening, gets very little of our attention. And the remarkable thing is that most of what we are carrying is finished. The conversation is over. The decision is made. The hurt has been felt. And yet the mind keeps picking it back up, turning it over, examining it again. Like the younger monk, walking down the road, unable to put the moment down. The Zen tradition asks a gentle question here. What would it feel like to set these things down? Even one of them. Even for an hour. What would the body feel like, the mind feel like, if we stopped carrying what has already ended. The Zen tradition offers a very simple instruction for this. Let go. Over and over, in 1,000 different ways, the Zen masters say the same thing. Let go. Let go of the thought that has finished. Let go of the feeling that has passed. Let go of the expectation that has not been met. Let go of the experience that is over. Let go of the version of yourself that you were yesterday. Each of these is complete. Each has had its time. And carrying them forward only adds weight to a journey that is meant to be light. The Buddha once compared attachment to holding a burning coal. The longer we hold it, the more we are burned. And the solution is not complicated. It is simply to open the hand, to unclench the fingers, to let the thing fall away. The pain stops the moment we release. This does not mean we do not feel things deeply. The monk in the mountains felt the loss of his belongings. The elder monk felt compassion for the woman at the puddle. Letting go does not mean not caring. It means not carrying. It means allowing each moment to be complete in itself, and then allowing the next one to arrive fresh. Each experience fully met and fully released, like a bird landing on a branch and then lifting off again. There is a beautiful simplicity in this way of living. Each moment is met fully. Each moment is released fully. Nothing accumulates. Nothing piles up. And in that lightness, there is room for everything. Room for joy when it arrives. Room for sorrow when it comes. Room for surprise, for tenderness, for the unexpected beauty that appears when the hands are open and the heart is not clutching at anything. The 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows move through an open life like wind through an open window. They come in, they are felt, and they pass through. Nothing gets stuck. Nothing is trapped. And the one who lives this way is not diminished by the passing. She is made lighter by it, freer, more available for whatever comes next. This is what the Zen monk understood, sitting in his empty hut, looking at the moon. Everything he thought he needed had been taken. And what he found, in the absence of it all, was that he was still here, still breathing, still aware, still alive to the beauty of the night. The loss had not taken anything essential from him. It had, if anything, revealed how little was essential. And in that revelation, there was peace. The thief took the bowls. The thief took the pot. The thief took the blanket. But the moon remained. And the moon was enough. This is the quiet promise at the heart of the Zen tradition, that beneath everything we accumulate and everything we lose, there is something that cannot be taken, something that does not come and go. The awareness that is reading these words, the presence that is here, right now, in this moment. It has always been here. It will always be here. And when everything else is stripped away, it shines like moonlight through a window, steady and bright and free. Let us pause here. Let whatever you are holding loosen, just a little. There is nothing you need to carry right now. Whenever you are ready, we will continue. Have you ever had a perfect day? One of those rare, luminous days when everything seemed to align. The air was right. The light was right. The company was right. Everything flowed without effort, and there was a feeling of ease that seemed to come from nowhere and require nothing. And then, sometime later, when the memory of that day was still glowing, you tried to have it again. You went to the same place. You arranged the same conditions. You waited for the same feeling to arrive. And it was not the same. It could not be. Because the original day was not made of the place or the food or the conditions. It was made of a moment, a particular arrangement of light and mood and openness that had arisen on its own and could not be reassembled by will. This is one of the most human tendencies there is. A beautiful experience arrives, and the mind takes a photograph of it. It files it away under how things should feel. And from that point on, every similar situation is measured against the photograph. The real moment, with its own unique qualities, its own gifts, is judged against the memory. And the memory always wins, because the memory has been polished by time. The rough edges have been smoothed away. What remains is an ideal, and no living moment can compete with an ideal. The Buddhist tradition has a very clear teaching on this. The Buddha said, "Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment." It sounds simple, but as anyone who has tried it knows, this is one of the hardest things a human being can do. The mind loves the past. It trusts the past. The past is known, and the present is uncertain, and uncertainty makes the mind uncomfortable. There is a story about a practitioner who experienced this struggle in a way that was both painful and, in the end, deeply freeing. She had been practicing Buddhist meditation for several years at a monastery in the mountains. Over time, her sitting had deepened considerably. There came a period, lasting many weeks, when something extraordinary began to happen in her meditation. Each time she sat down, a profound stillness would settle over her. The boundaries of the body seemed to soften and dissolve. There was a feeling of lightness, as if the body were made not of bone and muscle, but of something luminous and weightless. She called it, in her own mind, the body of light. It was beautiful. It was peaceful beyond anything she had known. She would sit for hours and the time would pass as if it were minutes. The whole experience had a quality of grace to it, as if she had been given a gift she had not earned and did not fully understand. This went on for weeks. And then the season changed, and the time came for her to leave the monastery and return to the world for a while. She went back to her ordinary life. She worked. She visited family. She attended to the things that needed attending to. But all the while, in the back of her mind, she was thinking about the body of light. She was counting the days until she could return to the monastery. She could not wait to sit again. She could not wait to feel that luminous dissolving, that extraordinary peace. After several months, she returned. She took her seat in the meditation hall with great anticipation. She settled in. She waited for the light to come. It did not come. Instead of lightness, there was heaviness. Instead of dissolving, there was contraction. The body felt dense and knotted, full of tension. Where before there had been openness, now there was tightness. Where before there had been peace, now there was frustration. It was, she later said, as if the body of light had been replaced by a body of twisted steel. She tried harder. She sat longer. She bore down with her concentration, trying to force the mind back to that place of ease. She was certain that if she just tried hard enough, if she pushed past whatever obstacle was in the way, the light would return. It did not return. Weeks passed, then months. She kept pushing. She kept striving. And the harder she pushed, the more the tightness increased. The struggle became the dominant note of her practice. She sat with clenched teeth and rigid determination, fighting against what was actually present, trying to replace it with what she remembered. Nearly 2 years went by in this way. 2 years of sitting, day after day, in a war with her own experience. 2 years of reaching for something that had already gone. And then, one day, something very simple happened. She was sitting in the meditation hall, deep in the usual struggle, and she caught it. She saw what she was doing. She saw that she was not actually meditating. She was remembering. She was trying to recreate a past experience. She was fighting against the present moment, against what was actually here, in favor of a memory. And in that seeing, something released. She stopped fighting. She stopped reaching for the light. She stopped trying to make her experience into something it was not. And for the first time in nearly 2 years, she simply sat with what was there. The tightness, the density, the heavy, knotted body. She did not try to change it. She did not try to fix it. She just allowed it to be what it was. And something shifted. It did not happen all at once. But in the days that followed, as she continued to sit without fighting, the practice began to open up again. In a completely different way than before. There was no body of light. There was something else. A steadiness. A groundedness. A peace that did not depend on any particular experience, pleasant or unpleasant. A peace that was willing to be with whatever arrived. This story carries a teaching that reaches far beyond meditation. It touches one of the deepest patterns in human life. We hold on to what was beautiful. We carry our best moments with us, not as memories to be grateful for, but as standards that the present must meet. The mind says, "It was so good then. Why is it not that good now?" And in that comparison, the present moment, which may have its own gifts to offer, is judged and found wanting. It never had a chance. It was being compared to something it could never be. This happens in relationships, where we compare the current feeling to the early feeling and find the current one lacking. It happens in work, where a past success becomes the measure that every future effort must match. It happens in something as simple as a meal, where we remember how good the food was at that one place, that one time, and every meal afterward falls slightly short. The mind is always comparing, always measuring the present against the past. And the present always loses, because the past has been edited by memory into something flawless, and the present is still raw, still unfinished, still full of imperfection. The Zen tradition calls this carrying a dead thing. A past experience, however wonderful, is finished. It is over. It is complete. And when we pick it up and carry it forward, insisting that the next experience match it, we are weighing down the living present with something that has already ended. The Buddhist teacher Ajahn Chah said, "If you let go a little, you will have a little peace. If you let go a lot, you will have a lot of peace. If you let go completely, you will have complete peace." The practitioner in the story let go a little at first. She stopped pushing quite so hard. She stopped sitting with clenched teeth. That brought a little relief. Then she let go a little more. She stopped comparing each sitting to the ones from before. That brought more relief. And finally, she let go of the body of light entirely. She released the memory, the longing, the idea that she needed that particular experience to be all right. And what she found on the other side of that releasing was not the emptiness she had feared. It was a new kind of peace, quieter than the body of light, steadier, less spectacular certainly. There were no dissolving boundaries, no luminous warmth, but there was something more valuable, a peace that did not depend on conditions, a peace that was willing to sit with the ordinary, the difficult, the unremarkable, and find them sufficient. This was a peace that could not be taken away, because it was not attached to any particular experience. It was rooted in presence itself. There is a subtler version of this same pattern that operates almost constantly, and the Buddhist teachings describe it with great care. It is the habit of waiting for something to happen. Even in a quiet moment, even when things are relatively still, there is often a thin layer of expectation running underneath. A sense that the present moment is not quite it. That the real thing, the important thing, the thing worth paying attention to, is just about to arrive. During a breath, there is a subtle waiting for the next breath. During a conversation, a waiting for the interesting part. During a meal, a waiting for the good bite. During an ordinary Tuesday, a waiting for the weekend. This expectation is so subtle and so constant that it can go completely unnoticed. It is like the hum of a refrigerator that has been running so long it has become part of the silence. But it has a cost. It means the present moment is never quite received. It is always being looked through as if it were a window, and the real view was somewhere on the other side. And so life passes. Monday is spent waiting for Friday. Winter is spent waiting for spring. The commute is spent waiting for the destination. The ordinary hours, which make up most of a human life, are spent in a kind of gentle dismissal, as if they were only the space between the important parts. But the Buddhist tradition suggests that the ordinary hours are the important parts, that the commute is the life, that the Tuesday is the life, that the breath we are breathing right now, this one, is not a rehearsal for a better breath to come. It is the whole thing. The Buddha pointed to this with great gentleness. He observed that the mind has a deep conditioning toward becoming, always wanting to become something, to get somewhere, to arrive at some future state that will finally be satisfactory. And the heart of his teaching was the invitation to step out of that cycle, to stop becoming and simply be, to stop reaching for the next moment and to settle fully into this one. This does not mean we stop planning or stop caring about the future. It means that the planning and caring can happen from a place of already being here, rather than from a place of always being on the way. The foundation is presence. And from that foundation, everything else can unfold in its own time. The practitioner in the story learned this the hard way. 2 years of struggle taught her something that no amount of blissful meditation had been able to teach. It taught her that the point was never the body of light. The body of light was a beautiful experience. It came, and it was wonderful, and then it ended, as all experiences end. The point was something deeper. The point was the willingness to be here, with whatever was happening. Luminous or dense, light or heavy, open or contracted. She shared this understanding later with a younger student who was going through a similar struggle. "I spent 2 years trying to get back to the light," she said. "And what I finally learned is that the tightness was also the path. The heaviness was also the teaching. I just could not see it because I was so busy wanting it to be something else. The younger student asked, "How did you finally let go?" "I did not do anything," she said. "I just got tired of fighting. I sat down one morning and I was too exhausted to push anymore. And in that exhaustion, in that surrender, I finally felt what was actually there. And it was enough. It was more than enough." In Zen, there is a saying, "Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The outer activities do not change. What changes is the inner quality. The chopping and carrying are no longer done in the service of getting somewhere, of becoming something, of arriving at some future state. They are simply done, fully, presently, with care. The wood is chopped, the water is carried, the breath is breathed, the day unfolds, and there is a quiet dignity in all of it because nothing is being compared to anything else. This moment is not failing to live up to a past moment. It is simply itself, complete, whole, worthy of full attention. And this is perhaps the most comforting thing about the Buddhist path. It does not require special experiences. It does not require bodies of light or extraordinary states of mind. It requires only this: the willingness to be here, with the in-breath and the out-breath, with the sounds that are present, with the feelings that are arising, with whatever is here, right now, exactly as it is. The 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows include moments of light and moments of heaviness. They include the spectacular and the ordinary. They include the mornings when everything flows and the mornings when everything resists. And the peace that the Buddhist tradition points to does not prefer one over the other. It holds them all with the same steady care, the same willingness, the same quiet, open presence. And in that willingness, whether the body feels like light or steel, there is room to rest. Let us take a moment here. Allow the body to be exactly as it is. There is nothing to reach for and nothing to push away. Whenever you feel settled, we will continue. The Buddha once said, "Your worst enemy cannot harm you as much as your own unguarded thoughts. But once mastered, no one can help you as much." It is a striking teaching. Of all the things in this world that can cause suffering, the most powerful is not outside of us. It is within us. It is the unguarded mind. We spend so much of our lives protecting external things. We lock our doors. We ensure our belongings. We take care of our health. We choose our food carefully and keep our homes in order. But how much attention do we give to guarding what is most precious of all? The Buddhist tradition calls the mind a jewel, a rare and luminous thing, capable of extraordinary clarity and warmth and depth. And like any jewel, it can be tarnished if it is not cared for. It can be clouded by anger, worn down by resentment, darkened by bitterness, scratched by careless thinking. And unlike a door or a possession, no one else can protect it for us. No one else can stand guard at the entrance to our own minds. That responsibility belongs to us alone. This is not a burden. It is a gift, because it means that our inner peace does not depend on anyone else's behavior. It does not depend on the world being arranged in a particular way. It depends on how we tend our own mind. And that is something we can always do, in any situation, under any circumstances. There is a pattern that runs through daily life, so common it usually goes unexamined. Something happens. Someone says something that stings, or a situation does not go as planned, or a relationship becomes difficult, and the mind reacts. Irritation arises. Frustration builds. Resentment settles in. And then, almost immediately, we point outward. She made me angry. He ruined my day. That situation is making me miserable. It feels true when we say it. It feels as though the anger came from the other person, as though the ruined day was caused by the event, as though the misery was delivered to us from outside, like a package we did not order. But the Buddhist teaching on it is gentle and very clear. The situation is real. The other person's actions are real. The difficulty is real. But the suffering does not live in the situation itself. It lives in our relationship to the situation. It lives in what the mind does with what has happened. The event is the seed. The suffering is what grows from it, depending on how the seed is tended. Two people can face the same difficulty and respond in completely different ways. One becomes bitter. The other becomes wiser. The difference is not in what happened to them. The difference is in what happened inside them, in how the mind met the experience. There is a story about a Buddhist teacher who was speaking with a student after a particularly difficult interaction with a family member. The student was frustrated. "She always does this," the student said. "Every time I see her, she says things that fill me with resentment. She makes me feel such aversion." The teacher listened patiently and then smiled. "She makes you feel aversion?" the teacher asked gently. "Or does aversion arise in you when certain conditions are present?" The student was quiet for a moment. He had never considered the difference. "If she makes you feel aversion," the teacher continued, "then you have no choice in the matter. Your peace depends entirely on her behavior. Every time she acts a certain way, you will suffer, and there is nothing you can do about it. You are, in effect, giving her the key to your inner life." He paused. "But if aversion arises in you as a response to certain conditions, then it is yours to work with. It is your garden. You can tend it. You can choose what to do with what has been planted." This teaching touches something very deep in the Buddhist understanding of the mind. It is not a teaching about blame. It is not saying your suffering is your fault. It is saying something far more empowering. It is saying your suffering is in your care. You are not helpless before your own reactions. You have the ability, with practice and patience, to change your relationship to what arises in the mind. The Buddha taught this through the metaphor of a garden. The mind is like a garden, and seeds are always being planted. By circumstances, by other people, by our own habits of thought. Some of these seeds grow into wholesome things: kindness, patience, understanding, joy. Others grow into difficult things: anger, jealousy, fear, resentment. And the gardener, the one tending this inner garden, has a choice. Not about which seeds are planted, because life plants seeds constantly and we cannot control that. But about which seeds we water. Which ones we give our attention and energy to. Which ones we allow to take root and grow. When someone says something hurtful, a seed of anger is planted. That is natural. That is what minds do. There is no blame in it. The seed simply appears. But the gardener has a choice in the next moment. Does she water that seed? Does she replay the words, build a case against the other person, rehearse a cutting response, feed the anger with attention until it fills the whole garden? Or does she notice the seed, acknowledge it with honesty, and choose not to give it her energy? Both are possible. Both happen every day. And over time, the garden grows according to what has been watered. There is a story from the Buddhist tradition about a man who understood this teaching in the deepest possible way. He had lived through a time of great trouble in his land. There had been conflict, and he had been caught up in it. For a long period, he was held in very difficult conditions, separated from everyone he knew, enduring hardships that would test anyone's spirit. During this time, he made a single decision. A quiet, inner commitment that no one else could see. He decided that whatever happened to his body, whatever difficulties he had to endure, he would not allow bitterness to take root in his heart. He would not let hatred fill his mind. That was his vow. That was his practice. He did not announce it. He did not write it down. He simply held it inside himself, like a small flame in his hands. It was not easy. There were days when the anger rose like a flood, and it took everything he had not to be swept away by it. Days when resentment felt like the most natural and justified response in the world. Anyone would have understood if he had given in to it. Anyone would have said he had every right. But each time the anger rose, he returned to his commitment. He noticed it. He felt its heat. He acknowledged it honestly. And then he chose, once more, not to feed it. He let it pass through him without building a home for it. He tended his inner garden with the same care and attention that a monk tends a monastery. Day after day, month after month. It was, he later said, the hardest thing he had ever done. And also the most important. When he was finally free, he made his way to a Buddhist monastery in the mountains. He began formal meditation practice for the first time in his life, and his teacher noticed something remarkable. The man's mind settled with a speed and a depth that usually takes many years of training to develop. How is this possible? The teacher asked. You have no formal training. How has your mind become so steady? The man was quiet for a moment. Then, he said, my training was in the years of difficulty. Every day, I practiced guarding my mind. Every day, I chose not to let hatred in. That was my meditation. And I think it prepared the ground for everything that has come since. The teacher nodded. You have been protecting the precious jewel, he said, and now the jewel shines. This story is about extreme circumstances. Most of us will never face conditions that difficult, but the teaching applies in the most ordinary moments of an ordinary day. Every time someone cuts us off in conversation, a small seed is planted. Every time a plan falls apart, a seed is planted. Every time we feel overlooked, misunderstood, or dismissed, a seed is planted. A seed appears when we are stuck in traffic. A seed appears when someone takes credit for our work. A seed appears when a friend cancels at the last minute. The seeds are small, and they are constant, and most of the time we water them without even noticing we are doing it. We replay the slight. We build a story around the inconvenience. We nurse the small wound until it feels much larger than it is. And in each of these small moments, the same choice that the man in the story faced is available in miniature. Do we water the seed of resentment? Or do we notice it, give it a moment of honest attention, and allow it to dissolve on its own? The Buddhist tradition does not ask us to pretend that difficult feelings do not arise. That would be denial, and denial is not the path. The feelings are real. The anger is real. The hurt is real. They arise because we are human, because we have hearts, because we care about things. The teaching is about what we do next. There is an important distinction here between repression and wisdom. Repression is pushing a feeling down, pretending it is not there, refusing to acknowledge it. That is not what the Buddhist path teaches. Repression creates pressure, and pressure, over time, finds a way out. Wisdom is different. Wisdom sees the feeling clearly. It says, yes, there is anger here. I see it. I feel it. It is here and it is real. And I choose not to build a house around it. I choose to let it move through me and dissolve in its own time, the way a rain cloud moves through the sky and eventually clears. This is what the man in the story did, day after day, in the most challenging of circumstances. He did not pretend the anger was not there. He saw it. He felt its full heat, and then he let it go. He opened his hand and let the burning coal fall. The Zen tradition has a beautiful teaching on this that comes in the form of a question. If someone offers you a gift and you do not accept it, to whom does the gift belong? The answer, of course, is that it remains with the giver. The Buddha himself used this teaching. There is a story of a man who came to the Buddha and began insulting him, loudly and at length. The Buddha listened calmly. When the man had finished, the Buddha said, "If you prepare a meal for a guest, and the guest does not eat, who does the food belong to?" "It belongs to me, I suppose," the man said. "Just so," the Buddha said. "You have offered me your anger. I do not accept it. It remains yours." In the same way, when anger or insult or criticism is offered, and we do not take it into our minds, it does not become ours. It does not enter the garden. It passes by, like a cloud passing over a mountain. The mountain does not move. This does not mean we become cold or closed off. It does not mean we stop listening or stop caring. It means we choose what we take in. We choose what we give our attention to. We guard the precious jewel of the mind, not by building walls around it, but by cultivating the awareness to know what is arising, moment by moment, and making wise choices about where to place our care. The Buddha said, "Whatever a person frequently thinks and ponders upon, that will become the inclination of their mind. If we spend our days watering seeds of kindness, patience, and understanding, the garden grows accordingly. If we spend our days watering seeds of resentment, complaint, and blame, the garden grows accordingly. The garden does not judge. It simply grows what is fed. And this is why the Buddhist tradition places such importance on awareness. Because awareness is what gives us the space to choose. Without awareness, we react automatically. The seed is planted and watered before we even notice it has arrived. But with awareness, there is a pause. A small, precious gap between what happens and how we respond. And in that gap, everything is possible. In that gap, we can choose what to water. In that gap, we can protect the jewel. The 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows plant 10,000 seeds in the garden of the mind. Some will bloom into something beautiful. Some will need to be gently weeded. And the gardener, tending the soil with patience and care, is not trying to create a perfect garden. She is simply paying attention, watering what is wholesome, noticing what is harmful, and trusting that, over time, the garden will reflect the care it has been given. This is the quiet, daily practice of guarding the precious jewel. It does not require dramatic acts of willpower. It requires attention. It requires kindness toward ourselves when we notice that the wrong seeds have been watered. And it requires the gentle, ongoing commitment to choose, in each small moment, what kind of garden we wish to grow. The mind is the most precious thing we have. It is the lens through which the whole world is seen. When it is clear, everything is clear. When it is clouded, everything is clouded. And the clarity or cloudiness is, more than we might think, in our hands. Let us pause here. Let the mind rest. Let the garden be still. Whenever you are ready, we will continue. What does a wise person look like? If we are honest, most of us carry an image. The image might involve robes, or a mountaintop, or a serene expression, or a certain quietness of manner. Wisdom, in our imagination, tends to look a particular way. It tends to sound a particular way. It tends to sit very still and speak very slowly, and give the impression of never being flustered by anything. The Buddhist tradition has a long and affectionate history of dismantling this image. Because the truth, as anyone who has spent time with genuine teachers will tell you, is that wisdom takes 1,000 different forms. Some of the most awakened people who have ever lived were loud. Some were quiet. Some were meticulous. Some were wildly untidy. Some sat still for days at a time. Some could not sit still for 5 minutes. The one thing they had in common was not a style. It was a depth, and that depth expressed itself differently in each one. There is a story about a young person who began practicing meditation while living far from home. He was young and enthusiastic and full of questions. He had studied philosophy, and he was endlessly curious about the nature of the mind. He found a Buddhist monastery nearby and began visiting, asking the monks question after question about consciousness, about perception, about the nature of reality. He asked so many questions, with such persistence, that the monks eventually suggested he try meditating, if only to give them a rest. And so he did. His very first sitting lasted about 5 minutes. That was all he could manage. His legs ached. His back was sore. His mind raced like a startled animal. 5 minutes felt like an hour. But something happened in those 5 minutes that changed the course of his life. For the first time, he realized there was a way to look inward. His entire life, all his education, all his curiosity had been directed outward, toward the world, toward books, toward other people's ideas. And here was a doorway going the other direction, a way to explore the landscape inside. He had studied the universe of philosophy and ideas, and suddenly he discovered there was a universe inside himself that he had never visited. He was so excited by this discovery that he did something that, years later, still made him smile when he told the story. He would sit down to meditate, and then he would invite his friends over to watch him do it. He set up quite a scene. He was tall, and ordinary chairs were not comfortable enough, so he found a large armchair. He placed it up on bricks to raise it to the right height. He hung a mosquito net around the whole arrangement, creating a kind of canopy. The effect, whether he intended it or not, was that he was sitting in what looked very much like a throne. And there he would sit, in his mosquito net throne, while his bemused friends gathered around to observe. He told this story on himself with great warmth, because he recognized the pattern. It was the pattern of turning practice into performance, of building an identity around something that is, at its heart, about letting go of identity. He had barely begun, and already he was constructing a version of himself as a meditator, already building the throne. It is a funny image, and it points to something very real. We create images of what spiritual practice should look like. We build thrones, literally or figuratively. We develop ideas about the proper posture, the proper attitude, the proper facial expression, the proper response to every situation. And those images, as innocent as they seem, can become obstacles, because we start performing wisdom rather than living it. We start curating a spiritual self rather than discovering our actual self. One of the great benefits of learning from different teachers is that it breaks apart the image. When wisdom shows up in different shapes, the shape stops mattering. What remains is the essence. In the Buddhist tradition, one teacher might be a small, energetic person in plain white clothes, running through a marketplace, bargaining cheerfully with shopkeepers, laughing, gesturing, full of life. You might see him and think, this cannot be a great teacher. He is too busy, too loud, too ordinary. And then you sit with him, and the depth of his understanding takes your breath away. His central teaching, repeated over and over with a smile, is just this: be simple and easy. That is all. Be simple and easy. And his whole being radiates that simplicity. Another teacher might be a family man, a person deeply engaged with the world, running a business, raising children, attending to the 1,000 practical demands of daily life. And yet, when he teaches, there is a power and a warmth in his words that fills the room. He is proof that awakening does not require withdrawing from the world, that the marketplace can be as much a place of practice as the monastery. Another might be a grandmother, a small, quiet woman who has been through profound sorrow in her life. She lost people she loved dearly. She was ill for a long time. And when she finally came to meditation, she was so weakened by everything she had been through that she could barely climb the steps to the meditation hall. She had to pull herself up, one step at a time, on her hands and knees. And yet, from that broken beginning, she found something extraordinary. A depth of meditation and a depth of love that few people in her tradition had ever reached. Her mind became so steady and so clear that other teachers spoke of her with awe. But when you sit with her, there is no sense of anyone remarkable. She simply feeds you. She asks about your life. She listens with complete attention, her eyes warm and present. She is empty of any sense of self-importance, and in that emptiness, there is a love so vast it fills the room. She is, at the same time, the most gentle person you could meet, and one of the most powerful. When a student once told her he was thinking of easing back on his practice, she looked at him with a steady gaze and said, "Do not be lazy." And he understood that she was not scolding. She was caring for him. She had crawled up those steps. She knew what was possible. and she did not want him to settle for less than what his life could offer. And yet another teacher might be stern and precise, with a directness that allows no room for laziness or excuse. Working with him, every moment of attention matters. Every lapse is noticed. There is nowhere to hide. And for some practitioners, at certain points in their journey, this kind of fierce attention is exactly what is needed. It strips away the casual, the comfortable, the autopilot mode that the mind so easily falls into. Each of these teachers is utterly different from the others. Different in temperament, in style, in personality, in method. One is quiet, another is loud. One is gentle, another is fierce. One lives in solitude, another in the middle of a busy life. And each of them points to the same truth. Each of them, in their own way, holds up the flower. The Zen tradition has always understood this. Zen does not have one style. It has 1,000 styles. Some Zen teachers speak in riddles and paradoxes designed to stop the thinking mind in its tracks. Some speak in plain, direct language that a child could understand. Some are famous for their silence, some for their laughter. The form does not matter. What matters is whether the teaching reaches something real in the student, whether it opens a door that was closed, whether it points, however roughly or gently, to the truth that is already here. And the same is true for each of us. There is no one right way to walk this path. There is no one right way to sit, or breathe, or pay attention. The young person on his mosquito net throne was practicing, even if it looked ridiculous. The grandmother cooking dinner for her students was practicing. The businessman driving through traffic was practicing. The stern teacher sitting in silence for hours was practicing. The form was different in each case. Wildly different. But the essence was the same. Presence. Honesty. A willingness to be here, with whatever is happening, and to meet it with care. The Buddhist teaching here is deeply freeing. It says, you do not have to become like anyone else. You do not have to adopt someone else's style, or temperament, or way of being in the world. You do not have to sit on a mountaintop or wear particular clothes or speak in a particular way. You simply have to be willing to be present, to be honest, to be here in your own life, with your own particular gifts and difficulties and quirks, and to let your own being unfold. This is harder than it sounds, because the mind loves models. It loves to find someone impressive and try to become them. A teacher sits beautifully, and the student starts imitating the posture without feeling it from the inside. A teacher speaks with calm authority, and the student starts performing calm authority instead of discovering their own natural voice. The Buddhist path is full of this temptation, and the antidote is always the same. Come back to what is real. Come back to what is actually here, in this body, in this mind, in this moment. The authentic always outshines the imitation. There was a Buddhist teacher who, when asked to summarize the entire path, would say 3 words: be simple and easy. His students would sometimes protest. Surely the path is more complex than that. Surely there are stages and levels and milestones and detailed maps of the inner territory. Be simple and easy, he would say again, smiling. He said it so often that it became a kind of signature. Some students found it maddening at first. They had come for depth, and he kept offering simplicity. But over time, the ones who stayed began to understand that simplicity was the depth, that the most profound teaching was also the most plain. that all the complexity they had been seeking was just the mind trying to make itself important. And the longer his students practiced, the more they realized he was right. All the stages, all the maps, all the elaborate frameworks of the spiritual traditions were just different ways of saying the same quiet thing. Come back to this moment. Be here. Let go of the rest. Be simple. Be easy. The Zen tradition shares this directness. A great Zen master was once asked, "What is the essence of your teaching?" He said, "When you are hungry, eat. When you are tired, sleep." The questioner was disappointed. "Everyone does that," he said. The master smiled. "No," he said. "Most people, when they eat, think of 1,000 things besides eating. When they sleep, they dream of 10,000 things besides sleeping. I just eat. I just sleep." The simplicity is the point. And the simplicity is the hardest thing. Because the mind wants complexity. It wants progress reports and achievement markers and evidence that something important is happening. It wants to know how far along the path it is. It wants a grade. But the Buddhist path keeps pointing back to the same quiet place. Here, now, this breath, this step, this moment. That is all. And that is everything. As this evening's teachings draw to a close, there is a passage from a beloved Buddhist master of the forest tradition that seems to gather everything together. He said to his students, "Continue your journey with wisdom. Use the understanding you have already developed to persevere. This understanding can become the ground for deeper growth, for the deepening of yet greater kindness and insight. Do not be lazy," he said. "If you find yourself lazy, work gently to strengthen the qualities that overcome it. Do not be fearful. If you find yourself timid, work with your mind so that courage grows. With proper care and with time, understanding will unfold by itself. In all cases, use your own natural wisdom." And then he said something very beautiful. "You come to where you have no more questions, to that place of silence, to the place in which there is oneness with the Buddha, with the Dharma, with everything. And only you can do that. So do it. From now on, it is up to you. Only you can do that." There is a tenderness in those words and a confidence. He is not saying, "I cannot help you." He is saying, "You already have what you need. The wisdom is already there, inside, waiting to be uncovered. The path is already beneath your feet. The flower has been held up, again and again, in every teaching and every story shared tonight. And the smile, whenever it comes, will be your own. No one else's smile. No one else's understanding. Yours. The 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows are your joys and your sorrows. They belong to your particular life, your particular garden, your particular journey. They arrive in your own way, at your own pace, in your own time. No one else can walk the path for you. No one else can see the flower for you. No one else can feel the breath moving in your body, or hear the sounds arriving in your ears, or sit inside your own quiet awareness. But you are not alone in the walking. The Buddha walked this path 2,500 years ago. Countless practitioners have walked it since, in forests and monasteries, and busy cities and quiet rooms, in every country and every century. Teachers have held up the flower, and students have smiled, and the teaching has been passed along, hand to hand, heart to heart, for all this time. And it is still here, still alive, still as fresh as it was on the mountaintop when the Buddha reached down, picked up a flower, and held it up in silence. The path is still open. It is still waiting. And the next step is yours. Be simple. Be easy. And let your own being unfold. Let us rest here for a moment. Allow the simplicity of that teaching to settle. Whenever you are ready, we will continue. Right now, as these words are being heard, something remarkable is happening. Thoughts are moving through the mind. They arrive from somewhere, stay for a moment, and then they are gone. Another appears, then another. It has been happening all evening, all day, all year, for an entire lifetime. And yet, for all their constant presence, we rarely stop and ask, what is a thought? What actually is it? The Buddhist tradition finds this question fascinating, because thoughts are among the most powerful forces in human life. A thought built every house that has ever stood. A thought began every journey that has ever been taken. A thought sparked every friendship, every love, every conflict. Thoughts have started wars and ended them. Thoughts have led people across oceans and into monasteries. The whole of human civilization is, in a sense, the product of thinking. And yet a single thought, examined closely, is almost nothing. It is a flicker, a momentary event in the mind, lighter than air, thinner than smoke. It arises, it hovers briefly, and it vanishes. If we do not grab hold of it, it leaves no trace. It is like a soap bubble, luminous for an instant, and then gone. The contrast is extraordinary. This thing that runs our lives, that shapes our days, that determines so much of our happiness and suffering, is, in itself, nearly weightless, nearly transparent, nearly nothing at all. The Buddhist tradition invites us to become curious about this, to bring a quality of gentle interest to the workings of the mind, the way a naturalist might bring interest to the behavior of birds. Not to judge, not to fix, not to improve, just to look, to wonder, to ask, what is this? What is a thought? When we stop paying attention to what it says and simply notice it as an event. It has a kind of energy, a shape almost. Some thoughts are sharp and fast. Some are slow and heavy. Some drift through like clouds. Some arrive with great urgency, demanding attention, and then dissolve the moment we look directly at them. They are, when observed closely, endlessly interesting and endlessly surprising, because the thing that seems so solid, so important, so real, turns out to be gossamer. The same is true of emotions. The Buddhist tradition encourages the same gentle curiosity here. What is anger actually? Not the story around it, not the reasons for it, not the argument about who was right and who was wrong. Just the experience of anger itself, as it lives in the body. It is a kind of heat, a surge, a tightness in the chest or the jaw or the hands. It has a texture and a temperature and a rhythm. It builds, it peaks, it subsides. It is, when met with honest curiosity rather than resistance, a remarkable phenomenon. A storm of energy moving through the body, powerful and temporary. And when we are curious about it rather than caught up in it, something interesting happens. The anger is still there, but we are no longer inside it. We are beside it, watching it with the same fascination we might bring to watching a thunderstorm from a sheltered place. It is intense. It is impressive. And it will pass. What is sadness? It has its own quality entirely. A heaviness, a softness, a downward pull, as if the body wants to fold inward and be very still. There is something tender in it, something that, when met gently, is not as unbearable as we might fear. It aches, and then it eases, and then it aches again. And if we do not fight it, if we simply allow it to be here, it moves through at its own pace and eventually clears, like morning fog lifting from a valley. What is joy? A lightness, a warmth, an opening in the chest, a feeling of the body expanding slightly, as if there is suddenly more room inside. It arrives without being summoned, fills us for a time, and then it too changes into something else. If we try to hold it, it slips away faster. If we simply enjoy it while it is here, without grasping, it gives itself fully. Each emotion is a whole world when we bring curiosity to it, and each one is temporary. Each one arises, stays for a time, and passes. The Buddhist tradition does not ask us to feel only pleasant emotions or to get rid of unpleasant ones. It asks us to be interested in all of them, to meet each one with the same quality of open attention, to ask, what is this, really? And then to wait, patiently, for the answer to reveal itself through direct experience rather than through thinking about it. There is an important thing to say about the quality of this attention. The Buddhist tradition is very clear that mindfulness, this quality of present moment awareness, is not a grim activity. It is not tense. It is not rigid. It is not a matter of sitting with clenched focus, watching the mind like a security guard watching a screen, waiting to catch something going wrong. The Zen tradition would call that paranoia, not practice. True mindfulness is light. It is spacious. It is curious. It has the quality of a child looking at something for the first time, not knowing what it is, and not needing to know. Just looking. Just being interested. There is an ease in it, a friendliness. The mind is not hunting for problems. It is simply open to whatever is here, the way a wide meadow is open to whatever the sky sends down. Rain, sun, wind, silence. All of it received equally. All of it welcome. This quality of interest is what keeps the practice alive. Without it, meditation becomes mechanical. Sit, breathe, note, repeat. The form is there, but the life has gone out of it. With interest, everything changes. Each breath becomes something worth noticing. Each sensation becomes a small discovery. Each thought becomes a fleeting wonder, arriving from who knows where, disappearing into who knows what. There is a story about a Buddhist teacher who was sitting with a group of students on a quiet afternoon. The air was warm. The room was still. A fly landed on the wall nearby and began to walk in slow, erratic circles. One of the students noticed the teacher watching the fly with complete absorption. After some time, the student asked, "Teacher, what are you doing?" "Watching this fly." The teacher said. "Why?" the student asked. The teacher smiled. "Because it is here," she said. And it is extraordinary. The student looked at the fly. It was an ordinary fly doing ordinary fly things. There was nothing special about it. Everything is extraordinary, the teacher said, when you actually look at it. The problem is that we almost never actually look. We glance. We label. We move on. But if you stay with something, anything, long enough, it opens up. It becomes astonishing. A single breath is astonishing, if you are really there for it. This is the quality of interest the Buddhist path cultivates. Not interest in the exotic or the dramatic. Interest in the ordinary. Interest in what is already here, right now, in this moment, which is the only moment there is. The breath moving in and out. The sounds arriving from all directions. The feelings shifting in the body. The thoughts rising and falling like small waves on a quiet sea. Every moment of experience is the Buddha holding up the flower. And the question is always the same. Can we see it? Can we bring enough interest, enough curiosity, enough gentle attention to really see what is here? As this evening draws toward its close, this is perhaps the quietest and most personal of the teachings shared tonight. It does not ask for effort. It does not ask for discipline or willpower. It simply asks for interest. A soft, steady willingness to notice what is already happening. The 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows are not just events to be endured or enjoyed. They are phenomena to be explored with the same gentle curiosity that a child brings to a new sound or a new color. Each one a small mystery. Each one worth a moment of genuine, unhurried attention. And when that attention is present, something remarkable happens. The ordinary becomes luminous. A breath becomes fascinating. A feeling becomes a landscape worth exploring. A thought becomes a brief, bright flash, here and gone, leaving the sky clearer than before. And the awareness that notices all of this rests at the center of it all, quiet and steady and at ease. Not striving for anything, not trying to become anything. Simply here, simply curious, simply alive. There is nothing to figure out. There is only something to notice. Let us pause here, one last time. Notice whatever is present. The breath, the body, the quiet hum of being alive. And when you are ready, we will close together. We began tonight with a flower held up in silence and a single smile. We have traveled a long way since then, through ancient stories and quiet teachings, through the seen and the heard, through rivers and gardens and mountain huts, through bodies of light and bodies of steel, through the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows that make up a human life. And the teaching, through all of it, has been remarkably simple. Be here. Be present. Let go of what has passed. Stop reaching for what has not yet arrived. Settle back into this moment, this breath, this sound, and let it be enough. The Zen tradition promises nothing extraordinary. It promises only this, that when the mind is still and the heart is open, the ordinary becomes luminous. A cup of tea becomes a teaching. A step on a path becomes a prayer. A breath becomes the whole world, arriving and departing in its own perfect rhythm. The 10,000 joys and sorrows will continue to come. They always do. But perhaps tonight something has loosened. Perhaps the grip has softened just a little. Perhaps the flower has been seen. And perhaps, somewhere inside, there is the beginning of a smile. Sleep well.